Welcome everyone. So just as you're joining, please do introduce yourselves in the chat, and if you would like to, there's an invitation for you to share something that is a source of hope for you at the moment. We are experiencing quite challenging times at the moment, so it's good to be reminded of some of the positives out there. So welcome everyone. It is great to have you joining us this morning for the launch of Bristol's first community climate action plans. My name is Amy Harrison and I am the community manager at Bristol Green Capital Partnership. And I've had the absolute pleasure of coordinating the Bristol Community Climate Action Project over the last 18 months. Before we get started with the content and our presentations from our wonderful community partners, I've just got a few practical and housekeeping things to share with you. So just so you're aware, the event is being recorded and we will be sharing the recording afterwards with those who couldn't be with us today. So we'll be sharing those through our usual comms channels. The chat is live, as you can see and as you are using. So we encourage you to make use of it throughout the event. We'll be sharing lots of useful links throughout. So yeah, really use the chat as a resource. We've got a packed hour and a half of presentations up until 11:30. We don't have a formal break, but we do have a short creative interlude from a local climate artist. So we're using webinar, so you will only be able to see speakers, and we aren't able, I'm afraid, to host and include a Q&A today. However, we will be hosting a follow-up event and workshop in June, which will have plenty of time for Q&A and audience interaction. And also, following the formal part of today's event, we'll be hosting some informal Zoom breakout rooms from 11:30 with each of the project partners, just for half an hour, in case anyone has got any specific questions, collaboration ideas, asks or offers that they would like to share with the partners. And we'll be sharing the link for that breakout room right at the end, just before 11:30. And those rooms will close promptly at 12 noon. We will also, at the end of the event, be sharing a very short online feedback form, and we'd be really grateful if you could spend a couple of minutes afterwards completing that. Do please spread the word and share the conversation and the plans through your social media channels, both during and after the event. We will be live tweeting throughout this morning, and links to social media handles and hashtags are going in the chat now. So I think that is all the practical information done and dusted. So now on to the slightly more exciting stuff. So, as I said, thank you all for joining us today to celebrate the launch of Bristol's first ever community climate action plans, developed by 6 of Bristol's fantastic community organisations in collaboration with their diverse communities. The plans have gone live this morning. They are both full comprehensive versions of the plans with a suite of priorities across 7 climate themes, and also shorter, more accessible community summary versions of the plans that are available. The link to our news page that went live this morning, where you can link and download all of the plans, is going in the chat now. So do please check that out and share widely. And before I talk more about the background to the project and the plans, I would like to say a particular thank you to the National Lottery's Climate Action Fund for enabling us to undertake this important community climate action work here in Bristol. The development of the community climate action plans wouldn't have been possible without their support. So just bear with me. I'm going to just get a screen up so I can. Okay, so why is community-led climate action important? The climate action we take as individuals and households is critically important, and the actions of governments, business and local authorities too. But We can't solve the climate and ecological crises without community. In Bristol, community has long been key to so much the city has achieved. It's people working together that makes real change happen. With community, we can achieve great things, and climate action is no exception. Bristol's community organisation showed real leadership during the pandemic. They proved how essential they are when a city needs to respond to a crisis, demonstrating why they need to be a critical part of our city's response to the climate and ecological emergencies. Throughout the pandemic, 6 community organisations representing some of Bristol's most disadvantaged communities have been busy co-producing the city's first community climate action plans with and for their communities as part of the Bristol Community Climate Action Project, supported by Bristol Green Capital Partnership, the Centre for Sustainable Energy and Bristol City Council. Demonstrating the leadership role communities are taking in the city's response to the climate crisis, the plans identify key priorities which help deliver Bristol's 2030 carbon neutral ambition, while simultaneously improving the quality of life for local residents as the city recovers from the pandemic and the country attempts to level up inequality. So during 2021, ACH, Ambition Lawrence Faston, Bristol Disability Equality Forum, Eastside Community Trust, Heart of BS13 and Lockley's Neighbourhood Trust led an in-depth community engagement process, working with artists, hosting community meals, presenting radio shows and kids podcasts to start accessible climate conversations with their communities. These conversations explored themes of transport, energy, food, waste, nature, buildings, jobs, economy and inequality, and enabled each community to create a unique set of priorities as part of a comprehensive community plan. The co-production ethos of this element of the project was critical. These plans have been created with, by and for the communities themselves, responding to local needs and issues and engendering real ownership. You'll be hearing lots more from each of our community partners this morning about the priorities they have identified, which range from new green jobs for refugees and young people to closed loop food systems that tackle waste and food insecurity, from the generation of community-owned renewable energy on local buildings to creating a bespoke repair hub, enabling Bristol's community of disabled people to save money and reduce waste. Equity and diversity have been absolutely core to this project. The project partners believe that community climate action is an opportunity to champion bold community-led climate action, which brings about social change and challenges existing inequality by ensuring the voices of Bristol's most diverse and disadvantaged communities are both heard and help to set the city's climate action agenda going forward. A key focus of the plans is ensuring the city's response to the climate and nature emergencies improves rather than worsens inequality for local people. Tackling climate change and tackling inequality aren't mutually exclusive. As we emerge from the pandemic, perhaps the biggest co-benefit of addressing climate change could be the opportunity to also address systemic inequity, or to use the current government's lingo, level up. We want to ensure that climate action responds to the reality of people's lives in Bristol right now. And it's important that we're not asking the people who are least responsible for carbon emissions to carry the biggest burden for reducing them. These ambitious community climate action plans have been developed by diverse neighbourhoods experiencing socioeconomic inequality, along with the communities of disabled people and refugees in the city. We believe taking climate action provides an opportunity to make the lives of local people better, and that by creating their own community-led plans, rather than having top-down initiatives imposed on them, the voices and needs of Bristol's diverse communities will be better represented. I'm going to stop sharing there. So I hope that has given you a little bit of context to the plans and the projects that they've been developed through. So critical to community climate action is the diverse networks of citizens and residents that are present within each of the communities. We wanted to make sure that some of those voices were heard at the event today. So we are sharing with you some fantastic examples of, my absolute apologies, I've actually jumped ahead on the agenda. I was so keen to share some climate hero stories with you. I've jumped ahead, so my apologies. Next up on the agenda is another welcome introduction, a kind of celebration of the power of communities from Manu, who is Director of Bristol Green Capital Partnership and Chair of Eastside Community Trust, who are one of the community partners. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Manu. Apologies for jumping the gun there, and to get onto the films, and hand over to you for another broader introduction, celebration of the power of communities.
Can you start my video, please? As in my face, I guess. There we go. Yeah, that's quite all right, Amy. I think yeah, people are dying to watch the films. Yeah, so thanks everybody for turning up on a Wednesday morning. I think this is incredibly important as an event, as a way of launching the plans that people have put a lot of hard work into. I thought maybe just to give a little bit of context about why I think community action is at the core of climate resilience, climate adaptation, and things we have to do to avoid some of the doomsday predictions that we've been given. I thought I would start at my very first experience of being in the UK. I had a friend here living in Birmingham who I'd gone to school with in my younger days, and this is about 20 years ago. And him and his dad took me out on a walk, and it was pouring, you know, it was kind of sideways summer rain. And both me and my friend, you know, we just wanted to go home. It wasn't really what we'd been expecting, but his dad kept insisting that he had read the forecast and the Met Office said it would be sunny. So we just kept going, and we got very drenched. We were miserable, and the sun never came out. I think I felt as if, you know, in his pride and unflinching trust of the Met Office data, this man had decided how the day was going to go. This was despite the evidence and despite the reality of the fact that we were all soaked. In some way, I think that's the definition of patriarchy. Father knows best, and we should follow the man at the front. Our communities can often feel like this, I think. They can often feel like this when things are done to them. Occasionally things are done for them, but rarely things are ever done with them. The story is, here's the science, we've done the research, now swallow the pill. And I think often the feeling is communities only get asked what they think about a plan when the plan is already made. It's kind of the definition of consultation in today's world. You know, and I think real consultation is actually about asking genuine questions. It's about asking those questions on an equal footing. And by equal footing, I think what I mean is, you know, the single parent that's struggling to cover their heating bills in a council flat somewhere in Bristol. You know, they know more than the climate scientist or the city office what their needs are. They know exactly what they need. You know, the teenager with his hoodie up, saving up for fried chicken, on a Friday night, or a pair of new trainers. You know, he knows a lot better than the climate scientist or the city office what he needs. And I think we'll never have a democracy that pleases everyone all the time in equal measure. That's, you know, that's kind of a fantasy. We can at least try, you know. But I think putting community organizations at the core of how we make decisions that will affect that single parent, that teenager, the elderly neighbor, the business down the road, you know, putting those community organizations at the heart of how we find out exactly what people's priorities and desires are, what their worries and anxieties are, resourcing those organizations, as has been done in some part by the National Lottery here, to engage meaningfully with the residents that they serve, with the residents that they've been set up to serve. You know, that's the kind of democracy we need to start seeing, you know, to start seeing real change on climate and nature in the really short time. And we have to remember that in the really short time, we have to fix those issues on a local level and on a global level. I think those organizations, you know, the 6 that are represented here, are better placed to communicate with the people they serve than the scientists and the politicians. I really believe that. And I think those organizations, they are on the ground. They're on the ground day in, day out. The actions, the sacrifices, the innovations, and real changes to both infrastructure and the way we're being asked to live, you know, and all of those things that we need to do, they will not happen in a sustainable way without people power and without the support of people on the ground, without businesses buying into that and investing their own money and efforts into that. I think the community climate action plans are, you know, they're a small but very, very vital step in creating genuine collaboration in Bristol around how we tackle climate change on a local level. I guess to add, on a community level, it's, you know, it's time to really start talking about you know, carbon emission factors and really start thinking about how we talk to and ask about how families can travel safely and comfortably to work, to school, to thrive in green spaces without needing to get into a big car. It's time to stop, you know, harassing people almost, to just look at the science and start having genuine conversations about how people's health and quality of life could be improved by making small changes to our supply chains, to how we source our food, what that food is, how we deal with congestion, how we create new spaces for people to be in public spaces together. These plans are, you know, I think are a real shot at changing the way we communicate and deal with the issues of climate change and ecological damage by putting diverse communities' voices and needs at the very heart of the debate. The economy and the system of economics which has led us to plunder our planet of its natural resources, you know, to create situations where 1/3 of people are at risk of not having fresh water on this planet, which is a crazy thing to think about. You know, that economy, it's not just a concept, it's not just a series of numbers and plans and infrastructure changes. It's people doing things, it's people working long hours, it's people setting up businesses with really great hopes for the future. And if the economics and society of a greener future are going to work, we have to make those people's businesses and their businesses' opinions count. We have to put them right at the heart of what we're doing. I think the plans, the ones that I've read, including our own at Eastside Community Trust, are a real step change in putting those voices at the very heart of what we're doing. I'll stop there because I was only given 5 minutes and Amy's going to tell me off, but thank you.
Thanks so much, Manu, and apologies again for jumping the gun there. Thanks so much. Wise words, insightful words as ever from Manu. A great introduction. So moving on, we were really keen to be able to share and have as many different and diverse voices in the room today. And that has its challenges. And as I was saying earlier, communities are made up of such an ecosystem and a network of different individual citizens and residents who are taking climate action themselves and part of their community's collective effort. So one of the ways that we're going to bring some of those voices into the room this morning is by showing you some of the fantastic Bristol Climate Hero films that have been developed by Bristol City Council. And first up, can be thinking about how the different generations within communities are making a difference in terms of climate. So the first film I'd like to show in this section is of two fantastic gentlemen, real local legends from Lawrence Weston, from Men in Sheds, and their film is entitled I Started Fixing Things. So Claire, if we can go to that film, please.
There's so much waste nowadays. People throw away broken items, so we decided that we would start repairing them. We live in a throwaway world, don't we? Oh, don't bother to repair that. I'll get a new one for X number of quid. I'll sling it in the bin.
People would rather go out and buy new stuff rather than repair the old stuff. Most people doesn't realise that a lot of stuff can be reused.
I have my own little workshop at home. You know, if I can get out and share this with somebody else once I retire, that would be good in the community. We have the skills, we had the time, but we needed some machinery, and Ambition Lawrence Weston done the funding for us, and we got all the machinery we needed. It's great. Yeah, we set this project up to be able to get elder people and younger ones out of their homes. So we like to get them along here, join in the fun, bring some of their skills if they can, which will help us, and we'll teach them hopefully new skills. The way it works is if people got something at home that's broken, rather than throw it away, take it down the skip, whatever they do with it, bring it along to us and we will try our hardest to repair it for them. If they don't want it back, then we put it up for sale to help keep Men in Sheds going. Basically, we restore, repair, and then reallocate goods within our community. 80 to 90% of the materials that we use is reclaimed timber from different sources. Timber merchants where they got offcuts they normally would throw in a bin and it'd go to land waste. We recycle them.
Not only are they saving money, but they're saving a lot of waste as well.
Yeah, sometimes people want to get repairs done because they can't afford to go out and buy new. And sometimes they want to keep it for sentimental reasons. We started off with 1 session a month, and now we're on to 3 sessions a week.
What we're trying to do is to try and get more people involved.
We want to try and show people how to do stuff. It's all about diverting things from landfill, giving people new skills, and creating a community within our area. We love what we do, don't we, Jim?
Well, I do.
And Jim makes a beautiful cup of tea.
Brilliant. And so moving on from one end of the generational spectrum to the other, and it's time for us to hear some inspiring and energetic voices from the young people from Lockley's. So this next film is from Lockley's Young Green Influencers, and theirs is titled We Want to Change the World.
For our environment, so we started picking up litter in our neighbourhood.
So yeah, to make something beautiful out of it and teach people to care about the environment.
Every place you walk around, there's litter everywhere. You just feel the urge to pick it up.
We care about the environment, don't we, Ollie?
Yeah, we're trying to do a project around climate change and gathering up people to do monthly litter picks around Lockley's.
Some adult came into our school saying, join the green influencers, save the planet.
They just asked us, what do we want to do to save the world? Because in a few years, we're going to be the ones in charge and they're not going to be here anymore. We don't want everything to be destroyed. We want plants to be still living and animals to not like be extinct and stuff like that.
We got all the rubbish, cleaned it, and we've been making sculptures, and it's been fun.
We made sculptures of animals because the majority of animals we made were really endangered because we're polluting the air and chopping down the trees.
Yeah, and we need to look after them. So we're hoping to take the sculptures into schools.
They'll basically learn about the planet and environment because there's no other planet where people are going to live. So yeah, we need to take care of it.
We wanted to spread the word out with posters
and like t-shirts and like videos online. Every little bit helps. That helps the environment.
Every little bit helps. Because it starts with one person. If one person says to the neighbour, do you want to help me pick up litter? Then that person asks that person, and that person asks that person. The group just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And you never know, it might change the world.
Fantastic, and as ever, great wisdom from the mouths of babes. We'll be sharing a couple more of those fantastic climate hero films later on, but without further ado, I would like to move on to hearing from our 6 amazing community climate action partners. They've each got a short slot each, and we'll be sharing links to their plans in the chat whilst they're up. So first on the agenda, I'm delighted to welcome Emma Geen, who is the Community Climate Action Lead from Bristol Disability Equalities Forum. So over to you, Emma.
Hi, thanks, Amy. I'm just gonna share my screen. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming along and listening. So on this slide is the sofa, which I spent much of last year carrying around the streets of Bristol. I put the sofa down and invited the people to come and sit with me, drink tea and tell me their ideas for how Bristol can act on climate change that are ways for good for them. This is really important because disabled people are one of the groups that are most hurt by climate change. And we can also be excluded by climate action that doesn't include us. So, for example, the straw ban did little to lower waste, but created big barriers for those who need plastic straws for medical reasons. Change can be an opportunity, however. So when half of disabled people in Bristol say that their quality of life is adequate or worse, if climate plans can make Bristol fairer for us, then we have lots to gain. Sorry, I just realised I need to switch so I can actually switch screen. It was co-produced with disabled people across Bristol. Doing this during the pandemic had some challenges. So COVID has made it difficult for many disabled people to go out, and many people are digitally excluded. So we did our best to get around this in as many ways as we could. As well as my sofa stalls, we went through community groups, we knocked on doors, we made a project video and mailed it to as many people as we could, and we ran a survey and sharing sessions. So this slide shows a picnic that we ran for one of those. People had lots of great ideas and we split these in two for our plan. So the first are our asks of the city and the UK. This is a bit different from the other plans because our community, disabled people, we don't have the money or power to make many of the changes that we really, really need. That's the responsibility of people across the city, maybe probably including you. So a few themes that came out. First, sure, they're included from the start. So this slide has a photo of some of the lovely people from Paul's Place sharing their ideas with me. Disabled people must be part of making the city's plans from the beginning to the end. And as part of that, what we'd really like is like a reference group of people with different impairments to be made so they can advise on any different sort of plans that come up. Secondly, we need to get rid of existing barriers so that disabled people can take part in climate action. So for example, for disabled people to be able to drive less, pavements need to be more accessible. That means flatter surfaces, stopping cars from parking on them, stopping cyclists and e-scooters from using them, and stopping shops from blocking them. Thirdly, disabled people must not be punished for not doing things that we physically can't. So, as I was saying, Bristol wants people to drive less and walk, cycle and use public transport more, which is obviously great, but people who can't do those things must not have their ability to travel limited. Can we think about, giving them grants so they can access cars that are better for the planet? We're also going to be running projects as the Bristol Disability Equality Forum, and some of those we're hoping to include creating like a repair and engagement hub run by and for disabled people to fix mobility aids. And this photo on this slide shows a repair cafe in action. We want to hire climate champions, such as someone to help disabled people to switch energy providers and access grants. And we also want to make sure that we're sharing learnings to inspire other cities, so that we make sure that other cities are including disabled people in their climate action plans, which unfortunately is not happening very often at the moment. Our plan has lots more ideas and details, so please read it and have a think about how you can help. But I quickly wanted to finish with this photo of our banner, which reads, "The future must be green and accessible." So accessible climate plans are important for everyone, as everyone becomes disabled if they live long enough. So 85% of people in the over 85-year-old bracket are disabled. And the climate action plans that are put in place now will shape the city we all grow older in. And so making climate action accessible now is important for the well-being of everyone in the city today and for years to come. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Emma. Really important stuff. And I'd also like to congratulate Emma on joining the Bristol's One City Environment Board, and yesterday, along with our next speaker, being voted one of Bristol's most influential women. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Emily Fifield, who is the Community Climate Action Project Manager at Eastside Community Trust. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Amy, and thanks to everyone for joining us today and for all the positivity in the chat. Let's see here if I've got this going. All right, so I work with Eastside Community Trust, which is a community hub based in the East Bristol wards of Easton and Lawrence Hill. Our neighborhood is often spoken about in terms of what we don't have, with some of the highest levels of food insecurity, health inequalities, and deprivation nationally. But it's also a really special, alive place with a strong entrepreneurial spirit and great diversity, where you can walk down the street with a mosque next to a temple, next to a gurdwara or church, and where people from all different backgrounds generally get on really well together. Unfortunately, this diversity does not tend to be represented in decision-making around the climate emergency, meaning the loss of important perspectives, ideas, and solutions that could help us meet our city's climate goals more effectively and fairly. It has also meant that the voices of people who will be affected most by the impacts of climate change are not usually at the center of decision-making where they belong. With this in mind, one of the key outcomes we wanted to achieve through co-production was to shift and open up the conversation to bring in more voices and different perspectives. So how did we go about doing this in the midst of pandemic restrictions when people were already feeling completely overwhelmed without even thinking about climate collapse? A lot of it came down to meeting people where they were at. This meant getting out to the places where people felt comfortable meeting and talking, turning parks, playgrounds, and picnic tables into centers of climate conversation. But these weren't usually started as climate conversations per se, and that was also important. They started as more general discussions about what people like or don't like about the local area, what their day-to-day lives are like, and things they'd like to see change or stay the same. Conversations were started by asking people what's important to them and what they're interested in, and then building links between these priorities and climate. It was also about meeting people where they're at by recognizing climate action and knowledge that is already here in our community, though sometimes hidden away or not viewed as green. When we began widening out the conversation and talking to people about things they already do as part of their daily life, we started identifying together actions they're already taking without thinking of them as sustainable or environmentally friendly, just things you do. Some of these were informal household activities and skills like mending or sharing extra food with friends rather than throwing it away. But people also started recognizing cultural practices and religious teachings from their traditions that actually have strong connections to climate action. As we spoke with residents, a wide range of priorities and great ideas came up around food, transport, energy, nature, and waste. A lot of the actions we worked together to identify are things we can start now as a community. And some of these, like cycle hire schemes and mending and upcycle sessions, are already underway. However, a lot of the priorities were part of much larger, more complex issues that will take more strategic action over a longer period of time and support from city and national decision makers to achieve. These are things like improved and more accessible walking and cycling routes around the city, more affordable and convenient public transport, and protections for renters to improve the energy efficiency and warmth of their homes without having to worry about them getting priced out by landlords. These larger systemic changes are central to ensuring our transition to net zero is equitable and brings everyone along, and will require a diverse, connected leadership base and a strong collective voice across groups and neighborhoods. In Easton and Lawrence Hill, we have a wealth of grassroots community organizations and diverse faith groups active in our community. When speaking with leaders of these groups in the co-production process, most were interested in and recognized the importance of climate action in some form, but many did not feel they had the information or capacity they needed to be able to engage with these topics. As we move forward, we will be looking to develop a climate leadership program to build on the progress made thus far in bringing people into the conversation and linking the issues our community faces with climate change and the transition to net zero. We will also continue to tell stories and highlight the work being done by different communities so people from underrepresented groups are recognized as a vital part of this effort and making sure these voices and their views and concerns are heard more widely. However, as we prepare for even more extreme rises in energy bills, we have to recognize that many individuals and organizations have been in crisis mode for years now, and any actions we take have to work towards some immediate relief while also laying the foundations for long-term change. In addition to training and workshops around just transition and broader themes of climate action, we will be working to build capacity and resilience so residents and organizations have the time and resources they need to be able to respond. We will be working to offer practical support for them to reduce their energy bills through energy efficiency measures and retrofit preparation, which will also make our community ready for investment and other opportunities as we move forward toward a just transition together. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Emily. And now we are going to take a leap to south of the river, and I'm delighted to introduce Kirsty Hammond, who is the Climate Action Lead from Hart BS13, based in Hartcliffe.
Hi, so I work for BS13. BS13 is an area of deprivation on the edge of the city. So we took a creative arts-based approach to our community climate action plans, focusing on young people because they are the future. The climate conversation needs to be accessible to all. So with this in mind, I would like to share with you our community summary video.
Something amazing's been happening in BS13, and I want to tell you about it. Over 1,000 young people have been on a journey. We've been getting our heads around the climate and ecological emergency. And what that means and how it affects us all, because if we don't know about it, we can't do anything. BS13 is our home. It's ours. Sometimes it can be tough here to make ends meet, to find work when opportunities are rare. We get that the planet and nature are in crisis, but like my nan says, it's hard to put it first when there's bills to pay, mouths to feed, and it's a struggle to keep going. Our carbon footprint is lower than in other parts of Bristol. If you don't fly every year and you don't buy loads of new stuff, it's going to be. But you can bet that with us managing with less and putting up with more, that we'll be the ones hit the hardest in the future. And it doesn't have to be like that. At the start of the Climate Action Project, we wondered, what can we do? We learnt and we shared, and knowledge is power, especially in our hands, because we are the future. We worked with creative people, we beatboxed, recycled rubbish into art, we invented new things to protect our planet from overheating. We learnt everything we do creates carbon, and that makes the planet hotter, which is a big problem. And we need to find new ways, and that means buying and using less, taking care of what we have, looking after our environment, because without it, nature won't survive, and neither will we. I wish I'd been taught all about this when I was little. We need to make sure that children can understand it all from now on. Then low carbon careers like solar panel engineers and climatologists will be open to us as well. My teacher said that
65% of new green jobs don't exist.
There is a whole new green economy on its way, and we want to be part of it. But we need investments and green businesses to come here so we can do those green jobs. How am I meant to get to college to get a good job when I can't get across town to be there? You can spend your life at the bus stop here. Buses get cancelled, and when they do come, they cost a fortune, and the journeys take forever. I'll do my bit, but it's not all down to me. We need clean, accessible and efficient transport, and not be forgotten about on the edge of the city. People are panicking about how much gas and electric is going up and how they can't afford to top up their key meter. Dad says we can't afford to be green. We've learnt about how if homes are built with clean, affordable, renewable energy, we save money and the planet. But our house is cold. There's not enough insulation. We'd love solar panels and ground source heating. Even if we had the money, it's not our house. There's no fresh bakery here, one butcher's and one veg shop, and that's miles from where I live. When we go shopping, our choice is expensive at the corner shop or a long walk to the supermarket and back with heavy bags. No wonder there's always trolleys dumped in the streets. Everything's wrapped in plastic, which means microplastics find their way into the earth, the air, the streams and the oceans. We want to talk to the supermarkets. It's about corporates making big changes too. We learnt about growing local food and how recycling that food waste into nutritious compost means we can start the growing process again. It goes round in a loop. I want to buy local food at a reasonable price. Better food, longer shelf life, less air miles, less waste. It would be healthier for us and the planet. Understanding how this is all linked has been our journey so far, and it's only the beginning.
Everything's linked.
Everything's linked.
We need to act now. We know the part we can play, and we need others to play their part too. Together we can bring about the change we need for BS13, for future generations and the planet.
Thanks so much, Kirsty, and yeah, powerful words there from the next generation in Hartcliffe. So moving swiftly on, we're going to intersperse our 6 fantastic community partners with one of our amazing community climate artists. So we were really keen in this project to try and make sure that we connected, communicated, engaged, inspired the broadest range of people as possible. And as part of that, we commissioned 3 community artists to work with our community partners. And we're delighted that one of those artists today, Dee Moxon, is joining us to talk a little bit about the work that she did both with Hartcliffe BS13 and some of the other partners on climate craftivism. So over to you, Dee, and Claire will play your slides for you now.
Hello everyone, I'm just going to trust you can see me. I'm just going to wait for the slides to come up. But while we're waiting for that, I think I'll probably just say that before the pandemic, I was doing a lot of work around the city on lantern events and carnivals, and I've been doing that for 20 odd years. And had it not been for the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have applied for this Climate Action Commission, because I just wouldn't have had the time. So I just, in some ways, I'm really glad I did, because it's actually made some changes in the way I work, which is really lovely. So this is a shot of my previous life, pre-pandemic, was running carnivals and lantern events around the city. So next slide, please, in a Chris Whitty style. So I wanted to work with craftivism. I'd already been doing that in my personal life when I applied for this role, and I was working around clean air in St George, specifically around Summerhill School, where my children went to school, where their levels of air were illegal really, and my children used to retch as they hit the main roads. So that was really important to me. So my first craftivist intervention was something some of the communities were also keen to look at, which was clean air. And so we made these beautiful sun catchers to post to cities' decision makers to encourage them to make some really good decisions around our clean air. And little did I know it, but at the point I was doing it, they finally did make the decision to bring in the clean air zone. So thanks for that, and thanks to all the politicians that received one of these items and gave us a reply. So I know a few of them got sent on to me, so thank you very much. So we did that in different ways in different communities. So this is something that we did in East Bristol, and in a film as well, which can be seen on my blog. And so can I have the next slide, please? And in Lockley, they wanted to do something that they could hang outside the school, and so we made this banner in at a community event day. So yeah, and so next slide, please. And what I should say, just going back to that, is that one of the things that was really good is it enabled us to raise conversations and talk about facts around clean air and what it was doing to our bodies. And so the ethos running through my work was deeds, not words. So I really wanted to actually make some physical changes rather than just talk about. So just growing at home is activism. It can create a food source. It can increase our biodiversity. So here you'll see the long picture where I was utilising broken jeans to make a high-rise planter. The idea being, if you've got a front door in the open air, you can hang a planter on it, if that's all your only access to outside, just to make that a bit more equitable. And in the centre, you can see some pieces of paper with seeds infused into them. And then we made those into little gifts of snails, and we gave them away. I think quite a lot of them went up to the Roundhouse with Kirsty's community in Hartcliffe, and were given away as part of at the end of the Lantern Parade when we did some tree planting. And then if we just move on to the next slide, please. And another thing I wanted to do was to encourage some thinking beyond the obvious, and to share some small changes that we can all make. So these little clouds you see here are really to draw attention to the cloud that we all use, that probably the film that is being made of this event is going to be stored on, and how much carbon is increasing, all the things that we don't want anymore. So it was just that QR code links to my blog, which just gives some small changes that we can all sit down with a cup of tea and in 10 minutes make some small changes, like deleting our old email accounts, getting rid of all the photographs of our foot on our phone, blah, blah, blah. So again, it's too much to go into now, but you can go to my blog and pick these things up. And so if we just move on a little bit. And the final part of my commission was really back to my previous working life, which was to have a lantern parade, and it was really great that all the climate action partners had to vote on which community should have it, and Kirsty was desperate for it because they used to have lantern parades, and she actually was in one in Hartcliffe as a child, and I worked in them. It was one of my first creative jobs in Bristol, so it was a really great circle to go back there. But our lantern parade wasn't just about lanterns, it was about spreading seeds and it was about planting trees. So you can see a picture here of bicycles, that we actually took trees on our parade, and the next day we met up and we planted those trees. And so there's a real legacy to that work, which I'm really pleased about. And those people will remember that it wasn't just about walking through the streets and making friends and being visible, but it was also about making a difference and planting the trees. And there's been a legacy in my work, and you can see here I've shared the seed paper again. So I am back in my normal job of creating lantern and carnival events in the city, and seed paper is something that I've now brought into all of my work, so that when I create with communities, we're spreading wildflower seeds everywhere we go, and it's now included in all my future funding bids. And obviously this is a quick whistle through, so please, if you go to the next slide, please. If you click that QR code with your phone, you'll get to my blog, and that will also be shared in the chat. And I will see you again in a minute, where I will be doing some more deeds, not words, and asking you to consider repairing your clothes.
Great, thanks so much, Dee. Yeah, you'll be hearing from Dee again shortly. And just a reminder that the chat is very active. We are sharing the links to all of the plans as each speaker's going through, and lots of links to Dee's work. She's made films of all those climate craftivism activities, so that you can all use them with your communities. But without further ado, back onto our second trio of community climate action partners, and I'm delighted to welcome Donna from Ambition Lawrence Weston to the stage. Over to you, Donna.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks everyone for coming today. It's great to see everyone's comments in the chat. I do apologise. Lawrence Weston is a neighbourhood on the northern edge of Bristol, with around 3,700 residents living in around 3,200 homes. Residents are living in deprivation, with 3 out of our 4 lower super output areas being in the top 10% for deprivation. They have a lower than average life expectancy, do well less at school, and leave with no or few qualifications, have less job prospects and opportunities, and live in poorer health with life-limiting illnesses. Lawrence Weston's carbon emissions follow the same pattern as Bristol as a whole. Our highest carbon emissions coming from goods and services, with our lowest carbon emissions coming from transport. Our overall carbon emissions per person, though, is less than the Bristol average, but the repercussions on our residents is huge. The cost of food, petrol and energy rising, poor transport links, poor retail offer, and rising sea levels impacts our local community. Ambition Lawrence Weston was formed in 2012 after facilities and services were being stripped from our community, and the closure of the City of Bristol College was the straw that broke the camel's back, ultimately bringing residents together who were fed up and said enough is enough. Lawrence Weston has attracted little investment over the years, and local residents felt isolated from the rest of the city, geographically, economically and socially. Ambition Lawrence Weston's aims are to reduce economic and social disadvantage experienced by many residents, increase participation in community life, and improve access to opportunities and services that our residents need and deserve. Lawrence Weston is a friendly and vibrant neighbourhood where the word community really matters. It will become a community where residents of all ages, apologies, that flipped through then, can live a happy, healthy and fulfilling lives both now and in the future. We want to ensure the creation of a mixed, well-balanced community with high quality, energy efficient, affordable accommodation. Residents will be able to travel safely on well-connected and affordable transport routes and access high quality jobs and services and shops. They'll be able to enjoy modern community, health and leisure facilities and an attractive environment which is safe, clean and well maintained. Our first community plan was co-produced and published in 2013 with local residents identifying priorities, including housing, public transport, parks and green spaces, but there was absolutely no mention or reference back then to the climate change or any mention of renewable energy. Although when we redeveloped the plan in 2018, renewable energy, car charging points, retrofitting and green jobs did come up as a priority for local residents. So we added in a new section in our community plan called Community Energy. This section also includes our aspiration to build our very own community-owned wind turbine. The consultation for our Community Climate Action Plan began in 2021, and the important starting point for developing this plan was taking the time to listen and really understand where local people were at in their life following the pandemic. Our engagement was framed around what we already knew was our local priorities, for example, public transport, housing, parks, green spaces, renewable energy, food and nature. Climate action is not something that we have been focusing on explicitly, and residents don't think of it as a direct priority for them. What our priorities were the co-benefits for improving overall health and well-being. And this was our focus, with climate being a secondary outcome of our engagement strategy. So, for example, our Lawrence Weston in Bloom project that we have been running for the last 3 years is about improving our green spaces, bringing people together to reduce social isolation, improve mental health, and improve the look and feel of our community, with incidental climate outcomes being protecting and improving the biodiversity within our community, sustaining wildlife populations, and improving local green spaces. Local residents are time poor, in low skilled and insecure employment, living in poverty, have housing issues, caring responsibilities, and couple this with the rising cost of living, fuel, food and energy prices, cut to universal credit whilst living in a pandemic. It is important to frame conversations around what is really important to your residents. For example, parking issues, fly tipping and vandalism, because their time is precious and will only want to get involved with things that are closest to their heart. Climate action requires collective action, and by working together, we can take powerful action which reduces carbon emissions and improve lives. Once engaged, you will be able to open up those conversations, work to the residents' identified priorities, with climate being one of the outcomes, but not the main focus of the engagement. So think, how will this, whatever it is, improve the lives for them, their families, and your community? Some of the priorities that have come up from our consultation and is now included in our plans are improved integrated transport systems, including improving cycling and walking routes, developing an energy learning zone and a modern method of construction and renewable energy skills academy, and supporting more local growing projects and upskilling residents to be able to cook and grow more sustainable fruit and veg. It's important to remember that community work is climate work, whether you think it is or not. If you are working to improve your local neighbourhood, improve local infrastructure and services, do litter picks, lobbying for better transport options, improve your local parks and green spaces, if you've written a community development plan or support residents living in food and fuel poverty, if you have a neighbourhood planning group, if you set up projects like men in sheds, swap shops, gardening projects, then you are not only doing community work, but you are doing community climate work. It is time to think differently and reframe the work that you do. My last thing to say is, remember, you are never too small to make a difference, and everyone can play a part in the aspiration to become carbon neutral by 2030.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Donna. Really powerful words there. I'm conscious that we've still got a lot to pack in. So without further ado, we are going to hand over to Tom Dixon, who's the Research and Projects Lead at ACH, who are working with refugee and migrant community in Bristol. Over to you, Tom.
Hello, everyone. So for the presentation today, I thought I would share the 5 key principles that have underpinned our work in the Climate Change Action Project to date, as well as touch on some of the key priorities for the next stage of the project and for the work going forward. So when working with refugees and other vulnerable migrants in terms of climate change, it's important to consider the context in which that climate change is experienced. In the UK, for a lot of us, I feel like climate change can feel like an abstract concept. It's something that's happening somewhere else, something that's happening potentially in our futures or in the futures of our children or the futures of our grandchildren. For the individuals that we work with, for the refugee individuals we work with, climate change is an immediate challenge. Climate change is impacting their lives now. It may be a contributing factor to the reason they've had to flee their home, and it's impacting the families they have in those countries of origin who are seeing droughts, who are seeing famine, and who are experiencing here and now the immediate effects of climate change. It's important to communicate with these communities, with the refugee and migrant communities, but in an active way. So we're not telling them they should be recycling more. We're not telling them they should give up their cars. We're actively listening to their concerns and trying to bring that into the work that we're doing around climate change via a collaborative effort, building on the lived experience and the skills that is inherent within those communities and bringing those into the climate conversation and bringing those into the work around moving towards net zero. We do this via championing the value and recognizing the value that those people can bring and including their voices in all of the work we're planning, all of the work we're delivering, and all of the work going forward. And ultimately, to truly combat climate change, it will require compromise in everyone's lives, but we need to ask ourselves, is it fair to ask those who have already given up so much to climate change and are currently experiencing the ill effects of climate change? Should we be asking them to compromise, or should we as residents of the UK and as British nationals be compromising more? So finally, we're looking at the key priorities for the next stage, and these have come out from those discussions and from that work we've done with refugee and migrant communities. So one of them, the number one priority that was raised was equitable access to green opportunities. So as previous speakers have mentioned, the move towards net zero, carbon neutral, will bring about with it incredible amount of opportunity around jobs, opportunity around training, opportunity around upskilling, but it's important that this is shared equally amongst all communities in Bristol and is not restricted to the same old faces who've been benefiting from this sort of stuff before. And finally, we think it's important, or our service users have said it's important to recognize the primary responsibility of climate change does not lie with them. It lies with business, it lies with Western consumerism, and this is something that we need to challenge as this project moves forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tom. Are you okay to stop sharing your screen now? That's great. Thanks ever so much. Yeah, very powerful messages. And now, last but by no means least, I would like to hand over to Suzanne Wilson, CEO of Lockley's Neighbourhood Trust. Over to you, Suzanne. And I should just say before you get started that yes, all of the slides we will be sharing afterwards. We're recording the event, we'll be sharing the recording, but we can share all of the slides in full too.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, I'm Suzanne. I run Lockley's Neighbourhood Trust, which is a community organisation in Lockley's. We run build 2 community buildings as well as projects across the whole of Lockley's, from this one around climate action through to community-led housing, wellbeing projects, and probably some other stuff I'm forgetting. Obviously, how do you run a climate action co-production project in a pandemic? And the answer is with difficulty. And one of the things that we started with is how do we kind of build on our strengths. We, like Ambition, had done a community plan previously, and although it didn't have a specific climate section, it did talk about people's attitudes towards climate change, towards renewable energy. It did identify that the majority of residents struggle with their fuel bills. It did talk about food and food availability, and it also just was a good setting across what was happening in the area, what was coming up on the horizon. We had a lot of development coming, and what did residents really want. So that was a kind of great place for us to start, which was starting with what do residents want and need, and how can we support them with all of the kind of benefits of growth without all of the carbon that's typically attached to that. So that was our starting place. And the other thing that we're really blessed with in Lockley is great community partners and community spaces, whether that's the kind of adventure playground, which has both great connections with local families, but also runs our food club, which is diverting food from landfill to provide low-cost affordable food to local residents who can make their own clothes, and local charity shop that was then available to do sort of upcycling and mending workshops alongside clothes swaps and things, and also working with Life Cycle, organisations like Life Cycle, which are national organisations but who have a kind of presence in Lockleys and have committed to working with us as a community. And I think those partnerships have been really helpful to find ways for us to be maybe a bit of a broker between what are experts in transport or energy and the community, and finding really helpful ways to connect people together. And lastly, I guess one of our key assets, alongside obviously the people and these organisations, is the place itself. And we're really blessed with loads of green space and housing greens, like the one you can see in that picture, but also quite big gardens. And so that was sort of some of our natural assets that we were building from. And yeah, so we had loads of conversations with people, we had loads of events, and I just thought I would share my kind of top 3 lessons learned, and some of them you'll have heard from other people already. So the first one was about like no fear, guilt or shame. Everyone is where they're at, and everybody has a lot to deal with, whether that's universal credit, food poverty, fuel poverty, loads of caring responsibilities. By and large, everybody thought climate action was important. It just wasn't the most important thing they were facing. And in that kind of post-pandemic, actually mental health came right up at the top. So how could we support activities that were fun and enjoyable and address that kind of need to connect with others and support their well-being, that also tackled climate action. So related to that, point number 2, make people's life better and fill a need. So, you know, some of that was around community feasts where we could talk about food and share food together, but also provide a really positive way for people to connect with their community and to go somewhere as a family that was affordable. And then finally, less talk, more action. We, you know, really wanted to have a group of residents that sat around and pulled together this plan. And actually, there weren't that many people who were interested in doing that, but they would come to a community feast or a clothes swap and then say, oh, what else should we do? Maybe we should organise a toy swap. There was lots of people who were interested in coming on a litter pick. So just really focusing on having action that could make people really feel like they were making a difference, and then use those activities or those kind of fun, you know, no music on a dead planet concerts to have some of these climate conversations, sort of climate action by stealth. And I'm going to kind of skip across this. We wrote a lot of actions, and in our summary they're quite high level and you can dig into the detail in our plans. And I think what's sort of important to note about that is there's a kind of high level themes that you all probably know really well already around energy and transport and housing, and there's then kind of digging into the detail about how can we really make that work in Lockley. So things like welly boot exchange, so that people aren't buying loads of new shoes and are able to access local green space. And just kind of then finally skipping ahead to our big priority, which was looking at the estate, and there's community growing groups, there's allotments, there is these 100-foot gardens, there's 28 different housing greens, and there's 240 acres of Stoke Park parkland. And so we're saying, how can we use all of that across the whole estate to have a kind of nature, food growing, biodiversity strategy, and take some of those citywide strategies around Feeding Bristol and around the ecological emergency, and say, what does that look like as a Lockley's example? So that's us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Suzanne. And thank you to all 6 of our community partners. It's been such a pleasure and a privilege to be working with them all on this project over the last year. And I'm sure you'll agree with me, some really inspiring work has been and thinking has been going on. Now we are not, as I said earlier, not having an official coffee break, but we thought it would be nice because there's a lot of information coming across. It's quite intense listening to, even the content is really inspiring, but it's still quite intense to absorb quite a lot of that. So we thought we'd have a couple of minutes of kind of to kind of sit back and rest a little bit and change the tempo. So we've asked Dee to come back to give us a little bit of a creative interlude, which I am going to be calling, I think, #radical darning, if anyone's tweeting. So just a couple of minutes, change of pace, and a little bit of an encouragement around the fact that not all climate action is big glitzy stuff. Some of it is about the small, modest things that if we all do collectively, we can make big impacts. So over to you, Dee.
Hi everyone, I'm going to ask you to be a little bit patient with me because I'm going to switch to a hands ready view in a minute, but before I did that I've just changed clothes to put on this cardigan, which is one of my favourites, which I've had to mend with visible mending. As you can see, all these dots, I put some extra dots on it quite recently because the moths had it. And I know that everyone sighs at the thought of sewing, but I'm not going to sew. I'm going to show you how you can mend your knits without sewing really effectively. And we're going to use this. I'm going to now switch to a have a little look view. And so Amy, if you can just let me know if you can't see my hands. I'm going to assume you can. Oh, sorry, tripod falls.
I can confirm that we can see your tools, and I feel that your hands are imminently coming to.
Yeah, they're going to come. I just had a tripod failure. Hang on a minute. There we go. Right, yes, perfect. So this here is, can you see that? I can, yes. This here is a felting needle. It's got tiny barbed bits, which fuses fibres together. It's going into this little needle holder. You don't have to have one of these, but it's better. It's better for you because you're less likely to hurt yourself. And it grabs, and this bit of kit will set you back about £2.50. And just to say that, oh, I can't get it in, I'll do it without. Just to say that I'll put some links on my blog today so that anyone can access it. And this is a felting brush to stop, so that the needle can go into something. If you haven't got one of these, I had a little hack last night, and you can use a clothes brush. So there you go, no excuses. And if you're not brushing your clothes, you should, because it saves you washing them, which is also better for the climate. So this jumper, I can put my hand in it. It's got a hole in the neck. It's one of my friend Matt's favourites, and he asked if I could repair it. And I sighed because I think everyone should repair their own clothes. But I said, go on then, I'll do it as a guinea pig. So if you can see it on this brush, I'm just going to do a little bit. So I've just got this needle. I'm just going to stab it. Don't have to sew. You just stab up and down. I've gone under the collar where it came apart, and I'm going in. And for the purposes of timekeeping, because this is already starting to work, I can see the wools, the fibres are going in. For the purposes of timekeeping, I'm going to use a felted power tool, which has got 6 needles, and just punch that in. There we go. That's fused together, that part of it. So now I've just got a little bit more to fuse in. I'm just trusting you can see this because I can't see if you can.
We can do.
Great.
Radical darning in action.
Yeah, this is so fast. I'm challenging anyone who's rolling their eyes about mending to buy one quicker on Amazon right now, even if they don't press purchase. Right. And so he made a pretty good choice in the first place. He told me to have this jumper for 25 years. It was his favourite. It is pure wool. An Aran jumper. That's it. That's all fused together now, pretty much. How quick is that? No sewing, just punching is also really satisfying. Right, so that's it. So now I'm just going to neaten it up with the single one. And I'm not going to do all of it in one go because I want to do it neatly so he wants to wear it. Now, if you, in invisible ones, you can use your power tool. That's all together, that's fused, that's not moving now. Underneath, you'll start seeing little fibres. I don't know if the camera's picking those up, fusing in. So I'm just going to go from one end, and you see these loops. I'm going to go in with one needle. And that's going in now, neatly. In at the top. That's a cheeky one there. Let's get that one in. And a bit like the Men in Sheds, I just started fixing things. I thought their film was great. It's once you start, it becomes addictive. And you just sigh as you see clothes just discarded. And I think a contemplation really on what's happening in Ukraine and all those people leaving their homes, not knowing where they could come back, when they're going to come back to. When you read some beautiful stories from people in the Holocaust, they saved the clothes that they had on their backs and they made them into quilts. And those clothes became memories for the survivors of parents that they'd lost if they had rags of their clothing. And so it's really a poignant thing to think about, is that these are our memories, these are parts of us, and we shouldn't just throw them away, and we should think about what these textiles mean. And also, I don't know if you've seen in The Guardian and other news outlets this week, there's an organisation called Jump who are doing a call to action for the relatively well-off. And one of the major calls to action is about only buying 3 items of clothing a year. So this will really help you. Like that's half mended now. And so I'm just gonna, I could do that really quickly, but I don't know how much time I've got left, Amy.
I think if you're okay, Dean, because I know that you are going to be sharing information about this and demos and Pinterest links and things on your blog afterwards that we'll circulate. And because we're running slightly behind time, if we're okay to pause it there. But thank you.
No problem. I thought that might be the case. No problem.
That's great. Thank you. And thanks for getting us thinking about the power of climate craftivism and radical darning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dee. So, a nice creative interlude and throwing down the gauntlet to you all to go out and have a think about what clothes you've got around your house that need a bit of a mend, and have a go and don't throw away, and see if you can keep a jumper for 20 years like Dee's friend. So next up, I am delighted to be able to introduce Nicola Beach, who is Bristol City Council's Cabinet Member for Climate, Ecology, Waste and Energy, to share a few thoughts and reflections and to talk a little bit about the City Council and the city-wide perspective. So thanks very much, Nicola. Over to you.
Thanks, Amy. Can I just check, can you hear me okay? Just make sure.
Yes, we can.
I'm not sure how to follow that, Dee. That was, yeah, it's really therapeutic watching you stab that jumper, which all seems very, very strange thing to say, but it was a great interlude, and I think I'll be checking your Pinterest out actually to fix the jumper I'm wearing. So to the climate action plans, if people saw me speak in the watershed in the summer, I think they'll sort of know kind of my views about just how important this piece of climate action is for Bristol, and I'm really fiercely proud of this project. I'm so happy to be here today talking about it. I think since the declaration of the climate emergency, Manu is absolutely right in his opening address that climate experts have been working through exactly what it would take to get Bristol to net zero by 2030. I think this view is understood now amongst that community, albeit it's a frightening reality. But to a large extent, I think the facts around the climate strategy can at times feel pretty abstract to to communities across the city, and quite overwhelming. They really describe a world that feels miles away from where I'm sat now in my family home, in my ward in Speedwell. So there lies a really critical gap for me. And then in walked Amy with her small army of amazing community groups and the National Lottery. And I really believe that this is the beginning of something truly transformative for Bristol and the way we make our climate policy. Securing a just transition needs to be led by where people are today. Once you move beyond the data that would keep global warming under 1.5 degrees by 2030, I don't really believe that there is one truth beyond that. Every community owns its own truth, and let's not beat around the bush. Life is getting harder at the moment, from Lawrence Weston to Hartcliffe. We will all see these fresh faces and fresh challenges as the government refuses to relieve the pressure on the cost of living, and we face our energy crisis head on this winter. Within Bristol, there are some blunt instruments out there, and the Clean Air Zone being one that, as an administration, we've grappled with in recent years. And there are other citywide policies that we will take, but to stand the best chance of getting to 2030. But I feel like with this amazing patchwork quilt of voices, and hopefully many more to follow, we can now feed and inform that policy better than we ever would have been able to do before. But Bristol is already, and I was following the chat with great interest, and Bristol is already blessed with community-led organisations, and I think there's a job to join the dots more purposefully than has perhaps happened in the past. You know, they're working double time with the council to get support on the energy crisis, on waste, on our natural spaces. You know, projects like Bright Green Homes and the Cheese Project are just two examples of energy efficiency programmes providing whole house energy efficiency for hundreds of homes in the last 2 years. We are also committed to empowering communities to generate their own electricity, and we passed a policy in Cabinet in December to enable the council to purchase renewable energy generated by communities to provide that sustainable income stream, which then enables community energy to continue to grow and power our council homes and civic spaces. I think it's just brilliant to see communities taking ownership and setting out these plans. But I think there's clear need for collaboration from partners across the city. So as a real ask for me, for anyone in the audience today who represents communities and organisations, to come and join me. Let's get around a table and just understand how we can realise the goals that are set out in these action plans. You know, just to name a couple very quickly, you know, community composting, what a straightforward intervention. Why is that not in every community in this city? The mobility repair and reuse shops, we met on Friday, Emma, and I'm astounded at how much we don't know about how much mobility equipment is currently thrown away in our waste system. You know, we need to understand that pronto. Insulation. We need to tool up our homes, make sure we can keep our bills down. Getting to the supermarkets, and I'll offer my full support to getting them to listen. And that has not been an easy task in the last 10 months. And then finally, the skills training and new jobs. You know, in Hartcliffe with the City of Bristol College, Construction Skills College there, you know, I'm already talking to them about why are they not already training in the green economy, and I will continue to do that. And Kirsty, I'd love to talk to you about that. I think overall, for me, it feels like these plans have got these arms and legs that extend way outside the communities they were written for. I think it's one of the soundest grounds for new policy to secure the just transition we need. And there are actually, just from a purely practical perspective, loads and loads of new ideas and new perspectives in these that I don't think are currently being heard across the city. I'm really pleased that the Climate Hub, Bristol Climate Hub, has now got a dedicated area to action plans, and my ambition is that every community in Bristol has an action plan just like this, and I really wholeheartedly support these recommendations. I'll finish just to say a massive thank you to Amy and all the climate action partners and the community groups. You know, it's an astonishing piece of work, and I'm just absolutely delighted to be here to talk about it today.
Thank you so much, Nicola, and it's really great to have your support. And I think what we'll be able to achieve with the council and the power of communities working together, you know, will be significant and impressive. So thank you ever so much. Now we are fast approaching the end of the session, but really keen to share, before I wrap up at the end, a couple more of those climate hero stories from different voices across the city. So next up we have got Zach, and Zach is talking about how he started litter picking. So Claire, can we roll Zach, please?
I noticed a real problem with litter in my area, so I started clearing it up. When I see the litter, I feel sad. It makes the area feel neglected. Makes people not want to be there at all. You know, it causes damage to the environment, causes risk to wildlife, can end up in the waterways, and yeah, ultimately sometimes can end up in the food chain, which makes it really bad. Started off myself just getting pickers and bags from Bristol Waste, and then joined the local climate action group, and we have regular picks around, because the more people that we can get involved, the more area we can cover and the more area we can make better for everyone. And it's good fun, yeah. We also talk about how to be more sustainable and be greener, etc., to reduce the amount of waste there is. One of the things we're also trying to do is get a deposit return scheme going. So with your plastics, your glass bottles, cans, you pay a surcharge on the top and then you take it back when it's empty to be cleaned and refilled, which is much better than chuck it in the bin or in the recycling, and it reduces how much waste there is. Plus you get your deposits back. Like these lot that were left here, all of them could have gone back. Yeah, we talk with local businesses, try and get them to do their bit at their end of the scale, and we're also talking to our local councillors and MPs to try and take it higher up. I like to tell people about what I'm doing so that it makes more people get involved, raise awareness, and ultimately I'm not doing it all. Yeah, I feel great now that it's lovely and clean after quite a few good clear-ups, and it looks much better. And it means people can be out in their local environment, enjoying it and being safe.
Great, and Zach's been doing great work with Bristol Disability Equalities Forum. And next up, we're going to hear from Esther from ACH, who has been working with the refugee community in Bristol. Claire, have we got the video coming? Hopefully it should be with us in just a second.
Sorry.
It wouldn't be an online event without a little bit of a technical hitch. Makes it truly authentic. Claire, I'm wondering if you're having difficulty, whether I just do
crisis without addressing climate change. It's one of the biggest reasons why refugees seek asylum in different countries. They kind of are the victims of climate change. You know, they're the ones who have to flee their home countries because we have like rising sea levels or drought or, you know, just really extreme weather. It's so unfortunate because, you know, if you think about their carbon footprint in a village in Sudan or Syria, you know, it's so much less than how much we use in a household even, you know, and it's unfortunate that they're the ones who have to pay the price. Our service users already live quite a low carbon lifestyle, and not out of choice or luxury, but actually out of lack of resources and necessity, and that's just how they have always lived. You know, they shop locally, they take public transport, they eat low impact foods. So we're trying to learn from them and empower them to live sustainably here. It's really inspiring to see actually that they are concerned about climate change even after the things that they've been through. So we've curated a course which focuses on integrating our refugees into UK society. So through language, skills, employment, through all of that, we would like to encourage them to seek more sustainable and greener jobs and continue to live a sustainable lifestyle as their situation improves. We at ACH are in a privileged position to impact the lives of the refugees that we support as soon as they come to the UK. We get to instill those really ethical and green ideals so that they can go on and live their lives in that way.
Great. More inspiring words. So as I just popped in the chat, we are running a couple of minutes over, so I'm just going to really quickly wrap up now, and for those of you who want to stay on for the optional breakout rooms, we'll be sharing the link for that shortly. So I guess in essence, what next? The community partners now plan to put their priorities into action, showing the contribution communities can make to the city's climate targets. Although these plans are a brilliant start, It's only through collaboration that the priorities identified within them will become a reality. Alongside the comprehensive climate action plans and priorities, the community leaders you have heard from this morning have also got bags of vision, passion, insight into and the trust of their communities, but they can't do this important work alone. So, as Nicola said, and others this morning, this is a call to action to the city. How could you help? Maybe by offering technical advice, collaborating on projects, connecting with funding opportunities, being critical friends, advocates or champions. We need to lever the collective power, networks and generosity of the city to make these plans a reality in true One City style. In the first instance, we'd encourage you all to download and read the plans and familiarise yourself with the priorities, and the link I think is going in the chat again now. And speaking of generosity, this project has developed the climate leadership capacity of 6 of Bristol's diverse communities, with thanks to the National Lottery's Climate Action Fund. But what about the many other communities within the city? We are keen to share the learning from our community climate action journey so far, to support and enable others to grow their community-led response to the climate and ecological emergencies. And to this end, we'll be hosting a workshop for other community organisations in the city and beyond on the 15th of June. So save that date and make sure you're connected to our comms, because we'll be sharing more information about it soon. And this event will share insights and resources and help Bristol create more community climate action plans. And finally, if you're involved with developing plans and projects in the city related to climate or social value more widely, that will have an impact on communities. If you don't already, please remember to listen to and collaborate with the many dynamic community organisations in the city, not just the 6 that you've heard from today, I should add. They are the glue that holds our communities together. They're experts of their place and of their communities, and they have a wealth of insight to effectively inform and shape your work. 6 of them have even got incredible climate action plans that also deliver on social impact. These collective community organisations in the city are trusted by and are a source of continuity for their communities, which is pretty important given the few years that we've just all experienced. They can be essential conduits for you to effectively communicate and engage with residents in the city. So, to close, Bristol demonstrated ambition and leadership as the first local authority to declare climate and ecological emergencies and develop city strategies in response. So let's work together to build on that. We've heard a lot today about what role communities can play. What role can you play? So before we go to the optional breakout rooms, I would just like to say a few thank yous. Firstly, a huge thank you to all our speakers, especially the representatives of the 6 community partners and their communities that have been presenting their pioneering work, but also just their energy, enthusiasm, commitment over the last year. Huge thanks also to Harriet Sansom and her colleagues at CSE, and to Mark Leach from Bristol City Council Sustainability Team. They have been a key part of the project team, and although we haven't heard from them directly this morning, their experience and insight have helped steer this project since its inception. Mark and Harriet will, however, be available for the breakout rooms should anyone like to come and speak directly to them. My thanks to my wonderful colleagues in the Bristol Green Capital team for supporting both the organisation and the hosting of this online event today so ably. It's very much appreciated. And we only had 1 or 2 little tech issues, which I think is pretty fantastic. And of course, a massive thank you to you all for joining us this morning. Let's see how we can work together to make positive change happen in Bristol for climate and for all our communities. The link to the optional breakout rooms is going to go in the chat now. This is, I guess, like the Zoom equivalent of coffee and informal networking at the end of an in-person event. It's totally optional, but we wanted to provide the space for attendees to be able to connect directly with all of the speakers today. We have apologies from Tom at ACH who can't make the breakout rooms, but we're going to pop his email address in the chat now should anyone want to contact him directly. And finally, we would like to end with some creativity and some cheer by sharing a fun set of climate action memes that were created by our other project artist, Morgan Tipping and Tommy Chavanay, in partnership with the residents of 4 of our community organisations. So I'd like to say a massive final thank you and goodbye, and hopefully after the memes, see a few of you in those breakout sessions. Thank you all for joining us.